In Ukraine, day after day, brave people fight to defend their land from Russian invaders. They lay their lives on the line for the cause, and while a large majority of the country's armed forces are male, there's also plenty of incredible women who are just as willing to play their part in fighting and winning the war. In fact, an entire resistance movement made up entirely of women was formed in 2023. It's been valiantly combating Russian aggression ever since, and this all-female resistance recently celebrated what might be its biggest victory yet, the destruction of a key piece of Russian hardware. The event occurred on the night of May 31st. A Russian military train was carrying fuel and food along the tracks near Melitopol in southern eastern Ukraine. The train was said to be headed towards the Crimean Peninsula, which is officially recognized as belonging to Ukraine, but has been annexed and occupied by Russians since 2014. But the train would never make it to Crimea. It was blown up en route, with Zla Mavka, the name given to the all-female resistance in Melitopol, sharing the news in a Telegram post. It's hot on the rails, and not just because of the weather. Operational Armed Forces of Ukraine report. According to confirmed information in the Melitopol district, in the temporarily occupied territory, partisans successfully blew up a train with cargo and fuel tanks. The train was heading towards the so-called Crimea. Now, it's important to note that Zla Mavka didn't exactly claim responsibility for the attack, but the timing of the post, plus the use of the word partisans, certainly gives the impression that it was involved or perhaps had some sort of insider knowledge. Regardless of who carried out the bombing, it represents a big win for the Ukrainian people. Russia relies on trains like this to fuel its war effort. They transport vital supplies and cargo great distances in the fastest and most efficient ways, taking ammo, food and fuel from city to city, region to region. Blowing up just one of those trains is enough to cripple a small part of the war effort, as it means Russian soldiers stationed in other areas won't receive the resources they need. That could, in theory, force them to change their plans, delay an attack, or even retreat from an area. Since this attack was conducted by partisans, not official armed forces, there aren't detailed reports about how it was planned and what exactly it involved. However, the Telegram account of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine did share a post about the incident. Rumble on the railway near Melitopol, a military freight train of the Russian invaders, was blown up. On the night of May 31st, 2025, an explosion occurred on a railway section near the temporarily occupied settlement of Yakimivka, Melitopol district, Zaporizhia region. A military train of Russian invaders was blown up. The freight train was moving towards temporarily occupied Crimea. As a result of an explosion on the railway track, the train with fuel tanks and freight cars derailed. The key logistical artery of Muscovite in the occupied territories of Zaporizhia region and Crimea was disrupted. After the rumble on the railway, the invaders announced an interception plan. Russian guard patrols are searching through populated areas. Checks at checkpoints are especially meticulous for everyone entering or leaving. The fight against the military logistics of the Russian occupiers continues. Again, this post doesn't reveal much about the nature of the attack, but it was likely to have been a carefully prepared mission. After all, getting a bomb or any sort of explosive device onto a Russian train in occupied territory is no easy feat, especially for resistance fighters who don't have access to the same kind of high-end military hardware, surveillance systems and so on as the Ukrainian army. It's a remarkable achievement for those brave people on the ground in Ukraine, and a sign of the incredible efforts that groups like Zla Mavka put in to defend their territory. Here's a closer look at this group, exploring how and why it formed and what it's been doing over the course of the war so far. First, a breakdown of the name. Zla means evil, while Mavka is the name of a female spirit, famous in Ukrainian folklore and mythology. Mavka spirits are said to be formed from the souls of girls who died tragic, unnatural or premature deaths. They dwell in the woods, taking the form of beautiful long-haired women who lure men to their doom and then tickle them to death. A fitting name for a feminine force of resistance. That resistance got started in early 2023, around a year after the invasion began. Its three co-founders were sick and tired of seeing Russian flags in their hometown, as well as Russian soldiers strutting out arrogantly as though they owned the place. They had each actively supported various anti-Russian activist movements before that point, but soon decided to form their own female focus group as a way to show the invaders the power of Ukrainian women. As Mavka 1, a pseudonym for one of the group's founders, explained to Ukraina in November, "We wanted to show that our women are brave and strong, and we will never play nice with them here. Plus, at that time, around 2022 to 2023, they were behaving very arrogantly toward our girls, and resistance from women really got under their skin." Now, as one of their first acts of defiance, the co-founders put up stickers around the city of Melitopol in southern Ukraine, bearing the image of a young Ukrainian woman wearing traditional attire, smashing a bouquet of flowers on a Russian soldier's head, with the slogan, "I don't want flowers, I want my Ukraine." This was in response to Russian soldiers handing out tulips and other flowers to women and girls in the city streets as part of International Women's Day celebrations on March 8. Since then, as the years have gone by and the invasion has continued, the Mavkas have conducted an ever-increasing array of acts of resistance, which are largely peaceful in nature, but still highly effective in disrupting and frustrating the enemy. Those acts include additional sticker campaigns, putting up posters with inspiring slogans and images, distributing leaflets, and even poisoning Russian occupiers with food and drinks laced with laxatives. Funnily enough, the very idea for this whole movement started as a joke. According to one of the co-founders, the small initial group of Mavkas were meeting in one of their kitchens one day when one of them quipped, "Why don't we start an organization to resist the Russian occupation?" It might have seemed humorous or outlandish at the time, but Zla Mavka has since turned into a very real and powerful symbol of resistance. And despite the seriousness of the situation they face and the scary consequences their actions can lead to, the group has maintained a strong sense of humor throughout its existence. Indeed, one of its most famous strategies, nicknamed Mavka Money, involves creating fake Russian ruble banknotes with images of the Mavkas in the place where typical Russian monuments and symbols would be. These notes have spread all around multiple southern cities of Ukraine, like Melitopol, Berdyansk, Tokmak, Kharkovka, and Simferopol. Some have even allegedly made it over the border and into the Russian region of Kuban. Naturally, when the Russians first spotted these imitation notes, they weren't too happy, and the Mavkas greatly enjoyed seeing their reactions. One explained, "The first banknote was amazing. The Russians went wild in their channels and in their comments. Watching their reactions was hilarious. The funniest part was that the discussion only escalated when an English newspaper picked it up. Instead of brushing it off as a minor issue, they inadvertently amplified the very idea they were trying to dismiss." Another of the co-founders joked about how seriously the Russian occupiers reacted to their actions and how foolish that reaction made them look. "Just imagine, we released copies of their rubles with the slogan that Russian occupiers are in Ukraine and they thought we were the fools. We released a 50 ruble note and they claimed that such a small denomination couldn't possibly disrupt their banking system or affect the circulation of the ruble. I read it and couldn't believe my eyes. Our latest joke at their expense ended up being labelled a serious terrorist act." Another humorous and effective initiative of Zla Mavka is nicknamed Mavka's Kitchen. This started out with women putting up posters, jokingly warning the Russian occupiers to be careful about what they ate or drank. They weren't actually poisoning any food or drink at the time, but hoped that their posters might, at least, make some Russian soldiers think twice or feel afraid about eating the local food. Later on, the Mavkas managed to gain access to a kitchen where Russians dined and decided to add laxatives to their food. They also mixed laxative liquid in their homemade alcohol, so when any Russians came knocking at the door demanding food or alcohol, they'd get a nasty surprise. One of the co-founders explained the strategy. "When the occupiers went door to door asking for moonshine or food, I thought, why not? I know how to cook, and if a bit of laxative ends up in the food, it happens. As for moonshine, that's a risky business. Maybe I missed something along the way." That's how the idea for Mavka's Kitchen came about. Everyone loves it. And actions like this really do have an effect. Since the Mavka's Kitchen initiative began, locals in Melitopol have noticed that the occupiers are much more wary about consuming any food or drink they haven't prepared themselves. The group even finds time to publish its own weekly newspaper, designed to help spread information and counterattack Russian propaganda and misinformation campaigns. One of the co-founders came up with this idea after visiting a friend outside Melitopol. They were shocked to discover that people even within Ukraine were being fed Russian-written news reports and believing what they heard, not taking the time to seek information from any alternative sources. So they decided to provide an alternative source. Each week, they put together a summary of important events happening across Ukraine, printing off copies to leave in public places or drop into mailboxes, and sharing a digital version on Telegram via the official Zla Mavka chatbot. The Zla Mavka does all of this without any sponsors, investors, or funding. They rely purely and simply on hard work and motivation, and it seems that there is no shortage of those two vital ingredients. The group has surpassed its co-founders' expectations, expanding rapidly over the years. New Mavka subdivisions have sprung up not just in Melitopol, but other cities and regions around Russian-occupied Ukraine, like Crimea, Donetsk, and beyond. And any woman who wants to join is welcome to play their part. Those with printers at home, for example, can print off more leaflets and newsletters to share in their area, or spread the word about Mavka's activities online on social media. As one of the co-founders says, "We need motivation, inspiration, and faith in victory above all else. Material concerns aren't our main focus here. Sure, money is needed, but it's not the be-all and end-all. What we really need are more eyes and ears. For people to keep resisting, they need to feel that their efforts aren't in vain. We often notice that the number of activists rises whenever good news comes from Ukraine or the battlefield. People feel inspired and ready to take action again, but it works the other way too. Everyone's reading online, and it's all too easy to lose motivation." It's worth noting too that the women participating in this movement face serious repercussions if they're caught or their identities are found out, and Russian occupiers are rigorously searching for anyone associated with the movement. They stop and check people on the streets, carry out random searches, and have installed surveillance cameras in areas around Melitopol to try to catch partisans in action. There are even plans for facial recognition systems to be set up, which will make it even easier for the Russians to identify resistance members and harder for the Mavkas to operate. Because of all this, members of the resistance have to be highly secretive in their communications and cautious in any actions they undertake. They run all operations through their Telegram channel, which is encrypted to prevent Russian soldiers spying on their messages or activities. Anyone wishing to work with the group has to first communicate with the Mavka Telegram chatbot, which can then put them through to the Zla Mavka leaders who assign various resistance tasks and activities. All identities are kept anonymous, and all pieces of personal information are guarded with the utmost secrecy. Members are also urged to practice strong cybersecurity practices, like using VPNs, deleting message histories, etc. As one of the Mavkas explained, "We never ask for real names or any information that could reveal someone's identity. Communication only happens through secure messaging apps. Plus, we constantly remind everyone about cybersecurity, clearing chats, not storing any sensitive information, and so on." The reason for all of this is simple. If caught, Zla Mavka members could be arrested, prosecuted, and even beaten, tortured, or killed by Russian soldiers. Yet, still these brave women keep going. They continue to spread their stickers, leaflets, posters, and newsletters. They continue to step out into the city streets and take risks for what they believe in. As one of the founders puts it, "The power is in the people. Each of us has the power to do something to help this world, from a leaflet to big decisions in the world's seats of power. We're here, and despite everything, we continue to resist because evil must not win. Please fight with us and for us." Of course, Zla Mavka is far from the only resistance group in Ukraine. There are many other groups of people who are not officially enlisted in the armed forces, but still carry out missions, attacks, and plans of their own to disrupt the Russian invaders and play their part in the fight for freedom. In fact, another group, known as Atesh, which means fire in Crimean Tatar, also recently targeted the Russian railways. On June 1st, partisans from Atesh destroy not a train but a relay box along the newly constructed Volnovavka-Mariupol railway. The railway system extends from Taganrog, a city in southwest Russia, to the occupied Donetsk Oblast of Ukraine. It's a key piece of the Russian logistical puzzle, as it allows Moscow's forces to bypass Crimea and get cargo to the front lines faster than before. The Russians were also most likely hoping that, by building this railway, their trains would be safer from any possible attacks. But they hadn't counted on the bravery and ingenuity of the Atesh fighters. Destroying the signal box was a very shrewd move from those partisans. With the relay box broken, the railway's whole signalling and traffic control system was disrupted, along with the flow of Russian fuel, food, ammo, and equipment to the front lines. The group shared a post on Telegram, informing its followers and the wider world of its successful attack. Atesh disrupted the enemy's logistics on a new railway section in Donetsk Oblast. Agents of our movement carried out sabotage by disabling a relay cabinet on a new section of the Zla Mavka-Melitopol railway built by the occupiers. As a result, the signalling and train traffic control systems were disrupted. This section is a key element of how the new Taganrog-Melitopol railway line, which the Russians hastily launched to transfer fuel, equipment and ammunition directly to the front line, bypassing the Crimean bridge. It allows for the delivery of goods from Rostov faster and with less risk. Damage to infrastructure in this direction disrupts supplies and increases the vulnerability of the occupation army. We continue to strike at critical points of the enemy. Each blow reduces their combat capability. Attacks like this may seem small when viewed in the much bigger context of the war itself, but each one has an impact. Each one represents a little but significant victory and a new problem for the Russian forces to deal with. Especially when logistical systems like railways are destroyed or damaged, it creates major challenges on the Russian side. Every long-term war effort, especially an invasion, needs strong logistics to back it up and maintain it over time. Fuel, ammo, guns, all of these important supplies need to be moved around constantly from place to place to support the soldiers and keep the fight going. Any disruption to those supplies also damages the force's ability to carry out its attacks and maintain pressure on its enemy. It might even open up weaknesses or give the opposition the opportunity to push back or launch a counterattack. In short, these kinds of actions matter, and that's why groups like Atesh have continued to carry out these sorts of attacks multiple times over the course of the war so far. On May 8, 2025, for example, the group claimed responsibility for a sabotage mission near Moscow, in which important substation equipment was destroyed, disrupting communications between Russian military units. Earlier in the year, in February, one of the group's agents cleverly sabotaged a Russian RP-377LA electronic warfare vehicle. They poured sugar into the vehicle's fuel system, which the Russians only found about a few days later. The simple but effective attack put the EW vehicle out of action temporarily, with an estimated 20 million rubles, over $250,000 worth of damage. In 2024, the group carried out several other attacks on targets like substations, satellite communication stations and railway lines, continuously proving to be a pesky and persistent thorn in the side of the Russian army. And it's not just from a logistical or military standpoint that these actions matter, but also for morale and belief. The Ukrainian people suffer wave after wave of daily attacks and bombardments. They've seen their homes and cities bombed and destroyed, and they hear constant news reports of fresh attacks, casualties, injuries, and chaos. They need bits of good news to balance that out and give them hope, and that's what they get, thanks to the actions of groups like Atesh and Zla Mavka. Whether it's stickers in the streets or bombs on trains, these bold resistance movements make all the difference. They show the Ukrainian people that, as well as the armed forces fighting on the front lines, there are also inspiring heroic fighters all around them, guarding their cities and streets, doing all they can to disrupt the invasion and strive for a future of peace and safety for the nation. So, what are your thoughts on groups like Zla Mavka and Atesh? How important are their actions in the fight for Ukraine's freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to The Military Show for more up-to-date news and information about Russia's war in Ukraine, the Middle East, and other areas of conflict around the globe.